Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a flourless, healthy chocolate cake. So this cake is one of my recent favorites and it's just free of flour. I add coconut sugar to it, or you can add maple syrup to it, which makes it a healthy cake. And it's just indulgent and super delicious. So let's jump right in. So for the ingredients we will need um, some dark chocolate. I'm using some dark chocolate that's been sweetened with monk fruit sugar, some cocoa powder. Now what I'm using over here is I'm using Special Dark 100% cocoa powder. This is unsweetened. This doesn't have any additives or even any sugar in it. Please don't use anything that has sugar in it because we are using coconut sugar and maple syrup. So yeah, just 100% cocoa powder. Then I'm using some maple syrup, whatever's left over. You can use entirely maple syrup for this recipe, but since I don't have enough maple syrup, I'm using a combination of maple syrup and coconut sugar. This is also organic and original maple syrup. It's not like a combination of any two sugars. Then I have some pure coconut sugar that's unrefined. And coconut sugar is generally brown in color, and that's what I'm using. So you can use a combination of both, or you can use just coconut sugar or just maple syrup. It's totally up to you, whatever floats your boat and whatever taste you like. If you haven't tasted either, maybe start with one or the other and see how you feel about it, and then you can use that one or use the other one. Then we need some butter, preferably some yellow butter. I don't have any yellow butter on hand, so I'm using whipped white butter. We need a half a cup of this. And then we need, this is also unsalted, but you can actually use salted if you want, and then you can skip out on the salt that we're using. But I'm using unsalted. Then we need 3 eggs, some vanilla essence or vanilla extract. I'm using vanilla extract. You can use vanilla essence, but just don't use the imitation vanilla flavor. That's just not the real thing. I mean, I've never used it in my recipes, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to work as good as the original vanilla essence. And then I have some salt, maybe like a pinch of salt. That's all you need. Maybe 1/4 or like a pinch of salt. So for the first step, we're gonna go ahead and melt up the chocolate and some butter with it. So for the chocolate, I'm using some dark chocolate, which has been sweetened with monk fruit sugar. You can use something sweetened with stevia or something sweetened with monk fruit sugar or coconut sugar, or just regular sugar if you really want that. But I'm keeping this recipe healthy and sugar-free, or rather on the healthy side of sugars. So that's what I'm using. I usually have chocolate sweetened with monk fruit sugar in my house. So that's what I'm using today, and that's about I think I'll put all the ingredients in the description box down below. But that's my chocolate. That you can see all that chocolate right there, and I'm using the whipped butter, half a cup of whipped butter on top of it. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and melt this in on a double boiler. You can also melt this in a microwave, but it's better to always melt this in a double boiler. It just doesn't change the taste. If you melt this in the microwave, it'll kind of change the taste of the chocolate. You might not notice, but if you try to both ways, you'll eventually notice that the taste and the texture changes of the chocolate if you melt it in a microwave. So the next step is to separate the eggs into egg whites and egg yolks in 2 different bowls. And I'm using a smaller bowl for the egg yolks and a bigger bowl for the egg whites, because I'm going to whip up the egg whites into soft peaks. And also I'm not using a very small bowl for the egg yolks because I will be mixing up other ingredients into that. So make sure you don't use a very small bowl for the egg yolks. Yeah, so I'm using about a cereal sized bowl for the egg yolks, and a really big bowl for your egg whites, or for the egg whites. And just make sure that you use a steel bowl or a glass bowl. Don't use like a plastic bowl or a ceramic, or ceramic should be fine too, but don't use like a plastic bowl for whipping up the egg whites because they won't whip up as well. And yeah, so just use a steel or a glass bowl. So here I'm done whipping up my egg whites, and that's how it looks. They're almost actually at hard peaks, which is fine too. But yeah, you can keep them as soft peaks too. So here are my egg yolks in the other bowl. I'm gonna go ahead and mix them the rest of the ingredients. I'm just giving it a zhuzh real quick before I add in the remaining ingredients. So the first thing I'm adding in is vanilla essence. Then I'm gonna go ahead and add in some salt, just like a pinch or maybe 1/4 teaspoon of salt, not too much. Then I'm gonna go ahead and give it a mix real quick, just to give it a heads up. Then I'm gonna go ahead and add in the maple syrup. If you have the entire portion or entire measurement of the maple syrup, you can go ahead and use in maple syrup itself. You don't have to use in coconut sugar. The reason why I'm using coconut sugar again is just because I don't have enough maple syrup on hand. Otherwise, I would definitely use maple syrup. It'll just be, a better option to use entirely one type of sugar. But here I'm just using the remaining amount of coconut sugar. I mean, whatever measurement is left for the sugar, I'm just adding in some coconut sugar. And also, I made this recipe a couple of times that I can actually figure out how much sugar I would need, but I would suggest you to use the measurements in the description box. So I'm going to give it a mix real quick. I'm not going to dissolve the sugar entirely over here, but just giving a quick mix so that the ingredients kind of mix up really well, and you don't see any bits of sugars or any egg yolks that's not been mixed up. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transfer the egg whites into a plastic bowl or any other bowl. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empty out this big steel bowl to incorporate all the ingredients in one big bowl together, instead of, because this is the biggest bowl that I have, that I'm trying to just transfer all the egg whites to another bowl so I can use that steel bowl to basically mix up all the final ingredients and the final kind of batter to it. So that's it, and then I'll show you the next step. So here is a mixture of all the ingredients that we just mixed up in the small bowl, and I'm just going to go ahead and transfer it to the steel bowl. Next, this is the melted chocolate and melted butter. So the one that we melted over a double boiler, that's the melted chocolate and butter I'm going to add to it. I'm going to try and get as much as I can out of it. I should be using a scraper, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give them a mix. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add in the cocoa powder. I kind of forgot to add it into the other small bowl, but that's okay. I can just go ahead and add it right now. So again, I know kind of how much cocoa powder goes into this recipe and how much I like, actually. So how much I like, and basically I can eyeball the ingredients. That's perfectly fine for me because I kind of know how much it goes. But for you, I would suggest you again to use the measurements down below. And yeah, I'm just gonna give it a quick mix. Make sure there's no lumps in there, or at least a couple, because before we add in the egg whites, you want to make sure it's kind of lump free, except for the sugar won't dissolve. So finally, the last step in this cake is to kind of fold in the egg whites. Now I'm gonna take them in 3 parts, and first part is just gonna be vigorously mixed in so that the batter kind of loosens up, and then the second portion I'm going to take is I'm going to go ahead and fold it in and gently, make sure you gently fold it in. You don't want to vigorously fold it in and lose all the air that you just incorporated into the egg whites. So yeah, next step is to fold it in gently, and I've made a whole entire video on how to fold your egg whites into a cake batter, so you can check that out. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and make sure all your egg whites are folded in and there's nothing left. You don't see any more egg whites and your batter is just smooth, and yeah, just take your time, take your patience, and it'll come around. So now my egg whites are all mixed up, and this is how the batter will look: smooth, soft, and runny. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and bake our cake in a cake mold or a cake pan. I'm going to use some parchment paper so it doesn't stick. You can also cut it up into a round shape and just place it in the bottom, but I just chose to go ahead and place it like that. I'm going to go ahead and pour in the cake mixture and pop it into a 350-degree oven for it takes about half an hour-ish. So you can check it at the 25-minute point, but should take about 20, 25, 30, about 25, 30 minutes. And yeah, make sure you preheat it like at the point where you're starting to whip up your eggs into it. And that's it, guys. Just make sure you kind of tap it a few times to get all the air bubbles out. And I'm gonna go ahead and pop it in the oven. Here is the final result. I'm not gonna take it out of the cake mold just as yet, because I'm gonna let it cool down for a little bit so that it doesn't kind of entirely break apart or anything. So I just inserted a knife on the side and not on the middle because I don't want it to deflate right away. It will deflate, so don't worry about that. That is a part of this cake. And yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove it and flip it over once again. And so I'm gonna cut up a slice and show you how it looks from the inside. It looks super nice and gooey and fudgy, and it just looks super delicious to me. Yeah, so it's a little crispy on the outside, but it's not too much. And yeah, I'm just gonna take a bite, and I can't resist to take a bite, so I always take a bite. And yeah, so that's how it looks from up front, and it's super gooey, super delicious, and guilt-free. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and give it a like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time, guys. Enjoy the video. Bye.